Greetings and welcome to A Contemplative Reader, where together we will explore the mysterious, the spiritual, the mystical, the otherworldly, and the transcendent in various forms of literature. Today I will be exploring some reading possibilities for the year 2026. 2026. Hard to believe that we are entering the second quarter of the 21st century. I remember as a kid that the year 2000 seemed to be some futuristic age a long ways off, and here we are, already in the year 2026. At any rate, this is going to be a year for me, where I will be expanding the content of my channel. I have mentioned on a few occasions before that my science fiction and fantasy reading began as a youth, and then I rekindled it in the year 2025. And in the time in between, I was largely reading nonfiction related to my two vocations, law and theology. As the year wore on last year, I found myself missing nonfiction content, history, theology, and the like. And I think that my science fiction and fantasy reading suffered because of it. So this year, I'm going to be reading different kinds of content, although science fiction and fantasy will still be a focus of mine. And so this exploration of what 2026 might bring for me will be broken out into different segments. And if you wish to just see a certain type of books that I will be covering this year, I'll put in some timestamps and you can just skip to that part of the video. I am not very good at following TBRs. I discovered that early on last year. So this particular exploration of the year 2026 will be more along the line of what has been called piles of possibilities on BookTube instead of an actual TBR. But I will go ahead and begin with my possible science fiction and fantasy reading for this upcoming year. Although I'll begin with what I do hope to read this year because I want to finish some series. And first and foremost, I wish to finish Book of the New Sun by what is rapidly becoming my favorite author, Gene Wolfe. So this past year I read Shadow of the Torturer, which I don't do top 10 lists, but if I did do top 10 lists, Shadow of the Torturer would be my top book of the year. It was just a magical reading experience for me as somebody who likes to explore deep theological and spiritual content and symbolism in literature. This was the pinnacle of that, at least for me so far. The second book I did read via audiobook. Again, a wonderful audiobook by the narrator. I found myself enjoying that story less, but I'm actually in the process of rereading it to create one of my deep dive videos. My one on the Shadow of the Torturer last year is actually one of the more consistently popular videos in terms of views throughout the year. And so I do hope to continue on with Book of the New Sun this year and finish it. First by rereading Claw the Conciliator, then moving on to Sword of the Lictor and Citadel of the Autarch, of course, and then finishing it off with Earth of the New Sun. Now, I don't have this as a buddy read per se, but I actually will be talking with Shrikant, the Nostalgic Dragon, on his channel about Shadow of the Torturer coming up soon. Shrikant is somebody that I've talked to before on his channel, and we are definitely like-minded booktubers, and to the extent that we search for the spiritual in whatever literature we might be reading. So look for that discussion video coming up soon. The next series that I hope to finish and do plan on finishing this year is the Dan trilogy. I read the first two books this past year, The Way of Edan and The Prophet of Edan. And so to finish the trilogy, I just need to read Return to Edan. There will be an audiobook coming out soon. I do find that I enjoy reading, particularly books like this one, via immersive reading, where I'm listening to an audiobook at the same time as I'm reading it. So the audiobook will be released soon, and so I hope to begin reading that book shortly thereafter. And also its sequel novel, While Darkness Gathers. Next, speaking of Dr. Chase, I should note, by the way, that if, again, I don't do top 10 videos on my channel, but if I did, The Way of Edan would have been probably a very close second. It seems as if Dr. Chase wrote that series just for me, a farm boy who likes epic fantasy with a heavy dose of world religions and spiritual content. It's as if he wrote his series just for somebody like me. So anyway, speaking of Dr. Chase, you might have seen the video that we did on his channel for Titus Groan, the first book in the Gormenghast series by Mervyn Peake. What an atmospheric Gothic novel that was, with a heavy dose of macabre humor. I enjoyed it quite a lot, although I didn't find a character that I could really root for or identify with. The overall novel was such a beautiful reading experience that I'm looking forward to reading the next one, which is Gormenghast, and then Titus alone. And so there will be further discussions with Philip Chase. I think one on my channel and then probably another one on his channel. Another series I hope to finish this year is the Chronicles of Prydain by Lloyd Alexander. I read the first 2 books last year, and the next book on the docket is The Castle of Lear. This is a series that I read some of the books as a child, and I think we're getting into territory that I don't recall reading, so this may be new territory for me. These are short books. Hope to knock those out in the coming year. I had hoped to finish them last year, but just didn't get it done. Next, I have a new series that was not on my radar screen at all last year until I was contacted by an expert in literature and fantasy in particular, named Paul Williams. And he approached me about possibly reading Orson Scott Card's Tales of Alvin Maker series. And so I did get that series. I've read the first one, Seventh Son. The second one is on the docket, Red Prophet. And there's, I think, 6 novels that have come out so far in this series. It is a story of folk magic set in early United States history, but definitely an alternate history. I'm enjoying what I've read so far. Definitely a gripping narrative. I had not really read much Orson Scott Card before, but wow, he can tell a really great story in just a couple of 100 pages per book. So I'm looking forward to further discussions of that, and then discussing it with Paul Williams and another friend of mine on BookTube who I've spoken with before in his channel, Sam of iSamWise. He has already read all 6 of the existing books. He reads much faster than I do. I hope to read most of them before we talk, if not all of them. And then as we approach the release of the 7th and final book in the series, which will be released, I think, in April, Master Alvin, I believe, is the name of that book. I hope to be ready to go to read that as soon as it is released. Some new series that I hope to tackle this year. I've talked about this a little bit before. I do want to re-enter the world of the Malazan from Stephen Erickson and Ian C. Esselmont. I read Gardens of the Moon a few years ago. I'm going to try re-entering it this year through the Esselmont route with the Path to Ascendancy, and I've already started reading Dancer's Lament, the first book in that series. I've been told that there is quite a lot of philosophical and spiritual content in this 30-some book series, so I decided that I better get started on it in earnest so I can get through it while I'm still alive. I'm at that age where I have to start thinking like that. Next, I want to talk and read. We're going to read more Star Wars books, particularly those in the expanded universe. I read some of them. Another person that I've met on BookTube, Alex of the channel Maneno Alex, if I'm pronouncing your name correctly, recommended some entry points for the expanded universe, and one of them is through the Old Republic books, and Darth Bane being the preeminent book in that era of Star Wars. Also have some self-published works that I want to read. They're all on my Kindle. These are folks that I either know through BookTube or reached out to me about reading their book. The first one would be The Way of Unity by Sarah Balstrup. And so I'm looking forward to reading that book and hopefully discussing it with her at some point in time. Another one is Pets for Legion by Sean David Brink. I read his book Bound by Blood last year, kind of a Christian horror book. And I think this is another one in that same vein. I'm going to read Inflationary Fairies by Stephanie McPeak Peterson, who is also on BookTube and reached out to me about reading her novel. So I'm looking forward to that. And finally, Bookish Chaz. Charles McGarry has written some books that are available out there, and one of them is Talendor's Guest. And so I hope to read that at some point in time in 2026 and talk with him about it. So that is science fiction and fantasy. There will be other things coming up, hopefully. I hope to read some more classic science fiction and fantasy as well as some other possible surprises, whatever the mood strikes me in the coming year. Next, I would like to read more comics and graphic novels. That's something I also enjoyed reading as a kid, and I've collected more over the years. And there's a couple of booktubers that I've gotten to know that are heavy into comics and graphic novels, so I would like to read some and talk with them about it. And the first would be Britton of Some Okie Dude's channel. And he has recommended a couple of graphic novels to me to read. Daredevil Born Again. This would be by Frank Miller. I think this goes back to the 1980s, Daredevil publications, and has some theological and philosophical content that we can explore. And he also recommended to me Blankets by Craig Thompson. I had not heard of this before, but I picked this book up and I'm looking forward to discussing it with him at some point, whether it will be on my channel or his channel. We haven't decided that yet, but it'll happen hopefully at some point in time soon. Another booktuber that is into comics and graphic novels is Shay of the channel Zachary Shay, and there's a couple that he has recommended. The first is The Saga of the Swamp Thing. This is book one of the graphic novel series, and these were comics that were released in the early 1980s, authored by Alan Moore, the rather famous comic author. And he is well known for promoting Mr. Miracle as well. So I did pick that up, and I'm looking forward to hopefully discussing those with him sometime in the next few months. Another graphic novel, and this is quite a heavy one here, going back to Star Wars. Another book that Alex recommended is The Tales of the Jedi. So I just love these great big omnibus editions that Marvel has put out, well over 1,000 pages, really well produced, but they're really awkward and heavy to read. So I do hope to get through them at some point in time this year as well and talk to Alex about it, hopefully. So those are the comics that I hope to read. There will also be a heavy dose of Conan, I'm sure, in there as well as Batman, among other comics that I hope to start reading again in 2026. So now I'm going to shift gears a little bit to the nonfiction section of my piles of possibilities for the year 2026. And I'm going to begin by talking about Historathon. This is an event that has been going on BookTube for the past few years. And I'd seen a few videos on it. And then when somebody that I follow, I think was one of the first people that greeted me when I joined BookTube last year, is John David. His channel is called Nicholas of Achacourt. And he posted a video about Historathon 2026 a few weeks ago. And I thought, I think I'm going to do that this year. So if you're not familiar with Historathon, it is just a way to encourage people to read more history, and it's divided up into quarters. So the first quarter, January through March, you read books that are from prehistory up to approximately the year 500 AD or CE, whichever term you prefer. And then each successive quarter will deal with later time periods in history. So I have some possibilities there. I have a shelf devoted to history down here. So A lot of what I will read will probably be Western civilization history, European history, and American history, but I do want to read from other parts of the world. So I did pick up Weavers, Scribes, and Kings, A New History of the Ancient Near East by Amanda Podanian. And I've already started reading that. It's an excellent survey of the ancient Middle East, what would be known as Mesopotamia, and modern day Iran, Iraq, and that region of the world. And then I do hope to read some of the Penguin History of Europe series. So in quarter number 1, that would involve reading The Birth of Classical Europe by Simon Price and Peter Thoneman, A History from Troy to Augustine. That would fit in quarter number 1. Also fitting in quarter number 1, at least for a brief period of time, would be The Inheritance of Rome by Chris Wickham, illuminating the Dark Ages from the year 400 to 1000. So this one will kind of straddle quarters 1 and 2 for Historathon 2026. I do have some additional Penguin History of Europe volumes. The Pursuit of Glory, Europe 1648 to 1815. That would be a later quarter. I'm missing a volume or two in the middle of there. Maybe I can pick that up. We have The Pursuit of Power, Europe 1815 to 1914 by Richard J. Evans. And then we have To Hell and Back, a History of World War I and World War II, Europe 1914 to 1949 by Ian Kershaw. And I think there's a final volume which covers Europe after World War II as well. Some other books that are in the piles of possibilities would be Dominion. Again, this would reflect my interest in the history of religion and spirituality. This is a book about how the Christian Revolution remade the world by Tom Holland. So this is a book I could probably read throughout the year, as it covers several centuries, several millennia actually, of time and the intersection of Christianity with culture. A couple final ones here I'll point out. Once we get into the Middle Ages portion of the Historathon, I would like to read The Birth of the Anglo-Saxons by Max Adams, 3 Kings and a History of Britain at the Dawn of the Viking Age. That sounds like an interesting volume right there. Another one that kind of spans the globe, not just European history, and crosses different time frames as well. A History of the World in 12 Maps by Jerry Broughton. I thought that one sounded rather interesting. And, if you're a fantasy lover but you want to get into some history, this might be a good one as well, because, as we know, fantasy books, most of them have good maps involved as well. So those are the piles of possibilities for Historathon 2026. Finally, I do want to periodically talk about theology on my channel. I think that goes along with my search for transcendence, spirituality, my particular interest in mystical Christianity, monastic Christianity in particular, but also as found in other world religions. So I think I'm going to primarily do that through a series of bookshelf tours where I'll just talk about some of the books that I have in my collection and some that I've read by different authors or in different subject matters. So look for that in the coming months, as well as periodic reading updates. The Mount Everest of my theology reading, which will be this year and in coming years, as it is such a gargantuan series, is the series by the Swiss theologian Hans Urs von Balthasar. He wrote about the transcendentals. Again, I've talked about those on my channel before: the beautiful, the good, and the true. And he devotes several volumes to the beautiful, several volumes to the good, several volumes about the true and how that relates to Christian theology. So I don't know what that will look like on my channel. I've started reading the first volume, The Glory of the Lord of Theological Aesthetics, Seeing the Form. I calculated it, and I think I could get the first 6 or 7 volumes of this 15-volume series in a year if I read somewhere around 10 pages a day. So we'll see how that goes for me. But there will be other books that I will be reading throughout the year as well, so stay tuned for that. At any rate, I look forward to further discussions with you. Let me know what you're planning on reading in 2026. And thanks for watching. Peace be with you.